Shalom, shalom, friends. Thank you for joining us. It's a delight to be here with my friend and teacher, Rabbi Stephen Greenberg, who is an Orthodox ordained rabbi, educator, writer, and speaker who has led the call for LGBTQ inclusion in the Orthodox world. He's the first openly gay Orthodox rabbi and is the founding director of Eshel, the Orthodox LGBTQ plus community support, education, and advocacy organization. Friends at Early Aesthetic, you need to know about Eshel if you don't already. Eshel's mission is to create a future for Orthodox lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals and their families. Through its innovative and culturally sensitive programming, Eshel works with each individual family and community in creating a place for the LGBTQ plus members. Eshel envisions a world where Orthodox LGBTQ individuals can live out their lives in the Orthodox communities of their choice. In 2001, Rabbi Greenberg was featured in the groundbreaking film Trembling Before God, and has since accompanied filmmaker Sandy Simcha Dubowski all over the world in over 500 post-screening dialogues. He authored the pioneering and acclaimed book, Wrestling with God and Men, Homosexuality in the Jewish Tradition, which he won the Koret Jewish Book Award for Philosophy and Thought, the most prestigious award in Jewish prose. Rabbi Greenberg is also a founder of the Jerusalem Open House, Jerusalem's first gay and lesbian community center. He is a faculty member of the Hartman Institute of North America, and he was previously a senior teaching fellow at Klal, the National Jewish Center for Learning and Leadership. Rabbi Greenberg received his BA in philosophy from Yeshiva University and his rabbinical ordination from REITs. He lives with his partner, Stephen Goldstein, and their daughter, Amalia, in Boston. Steve, thanks for making time.
No, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Shmuly.
Thank you so much. So let's start with Purim. I know there's many things on our mind, but let's start with Purim because we should start on a happy note, right? We are in the second month of Adar. We are excited to put on our costumes and hear the Megillah and send Shalach Manot and give Matanot Le'evyonim and fulfill the mitzvot of the day and bring more joy into the world. What's some Torah you're thinking about this Purim?
Funny you should ask, because 7:30 tonight, I'm giving a shiur on the dynamic between the hidden and the revealed inside the Megillah, and in a way that setting up the I don't even know if we need this anymore, but the possibility of a National Jewish Coming Out Day, and that day would be Purim. I mean, it could be, like at the end of Tanis Esther and the beginning of Purim, could be on Purim, but the notion is that nearly everybody in the story is incognito, is in drag, is in costume, pretending to be something they are not, and attempting to navigate the difficulty of holding a secret that they cannot share. So for Esther and Mordechai, they're Jews, and they don't share the fact that they're Jews. In fact, Esther is told by Mordechai, "Don't tell anybody." And then Achashverosh is hiding the fact that he's an incompetent who probably came to the royalty by marrying Vashti, who really is a Persian princess. And so, and Haman is basically presenting himself as the loyal servant to the king, when actually he's in it for his own ego and his own power. So the story unravels. Everyone is outed. By the way, the only person who's not hiding an inner life is Vashti. Vashti is the only one who refuses, in this case, to dress down as someone she isn't. The story ends in this powerful way where everyone is outed, and Mordechai and Esther become a kind of newly framed. It's something new in the world. A Jewish leader who is both fully alive to the Persian world and part of it in leadership, and fully alive to the Jewish world and in leadership there as well. And this is the very first circumstance of such a, so in a way, you might think of the work that Real Aesthetic is doing as also a piece of this revelatory transformation of what was hidden to be what was revealed.
Beautiful, beautiful. I love that so much. And absolutely that resonates for me. And picking up on this theme of revealed and concealed, and starting to think about our trans friends and siblings. On the one hand, if you're trans and you are invisible, you're at risk because you're invisible. On the other hand, once you are visible, you're also more vulnerable. so that the seen and unseen and vulnerability that comes with being seen and not being seen. So help us unpack what's happened in Texas. I think a lot of people are trying to understand both the dimensions of this attack on trans kids, and also trying to understand how to respond. Can you help us unpack this a little bit?
Well, I'm getting feedback, by the way, Shmuly, when I speak. Don't know what that's about.
We don't hear it here, so.
Okay, good. As long as you don't hear it, it's okay. So it's a larger question that can be addressed in this circumstance, but the most important thing to know is that no matter how this plays out in regard to politics, our responsibility is to make sure that vulnerable kids are not made even more endangered by the way in which adults might fear issues having to do with gender and sexuality. And the challenge is really real. Some 40% of all trans kids have suicidal thoughts and even attempt suicide in some cases, and it's an enormously high number. The LGBT kids are also in danger, but the trans kids nearly double that. So it's a very difficult world to be born into when one feels that one's inner life and one's, the representation that the body conveys to the world doesn't match. And knowing how to navigate that at the age of 3 and 5 and 7 and 15 is extremely challenging. And while I also think that it's very important for us to be responsible to the processes because they are morally complex in regard to transition, nonetheless, our first and most significant concern should be the well-being of kids. And so by the way, you should know that Eshel's been approached repeatedly in the past year and a half, because during COVID, many kids came out of the closet as trans or as non-binary, and they did so at camp away from their parents or in school in circumstances where schools with Orthodox frameworks had really no means of understanding how to manage, even if they had good intentions in mind and wanted to take care of kids. So the work is ongoing, and we hope that people can find a way to prioritize the subjective reality of these kids and do right by them, while allowing communities to be able to take their time in responding in ways that are challenging for them.
So just a quick follow-up on this. In regards to the pikuach nefesh issue, the issue of saving and preserving life, we know that giving proper mental health resources is crucial. Do we have data that providing medical access, medical resources to trans kids actually will reduce the suicide risk?
So it's interesting. So to be honest, I don't know the answer to that question, but my presumption would be is that you cannot separate psychological and medical support in this area. In this area, it is the most debilitating, emotionally debilitating, and undermining thing to watch one's body transform incrementally over time not in the right direction that one feels one, internally, is destined for. And that sense of not intervening medically for some reason is in a way a certain kind of torture. And so while it needs to be balanced by all kinds of concerns that both institutions and the medical profession and psychologists, psychiatrists might have, meaning I don't think that this is an issue that is simple. Nonetheless, there should be no way we put off the table any medical interventions that might prove necessary for the psychological health of the child.
Yep, very interesting. Very interesting. Thank you for that. So, so to look at the national movement before we go back to Orthodoxy, over recent years, obviously right now our heads and hearts are all in Ukraine. And over the last few years, we have been thinking about the Trump administration, the Biden administration. We've been thinking about COVID. But movement-wise, we talked a lot about race with Black Lives Matter. We talked a lot about gender in regards to the Me Too movement. And I wonder, we haven't heard as much about movements in the LGBTQ front. I wonder what you see happening on a national level in terms of progress and movements right now. Not that we're in competition with other movements in any way, of course,
Right.
but just to understand better what's happening on a national level.
Well, I think until this, the past administration and its rhetoric, and then alongside what has happened in the Republican Party on these issues, I think prior to that, the focus was largely on taking care of young people and making sure that the achievements of marriage equality were secured and supported across the board, not only in the kind of formal governmental frames, but also in religious frames, in frames where can married couples adopt children? In many places that's more complicated if you're gay, and to actually make LGBTQ marriage rights secure and grounded. Now, what occurred over the past 4 years now is a resurgence of a certain kind of halcyon fantasy that we ought to go back to a time when men and women were divided by homemaker and out of the house worker, when gender was clear, when sexuality was understood and heteronormative. And that conservative backlash is something I think that maybe some of us were not prepared for. So there's no question that I think right now, more than ever, we are in a position where the traditional Jewish community needs to be addressed, particularly because its ethos is now being reflected in larger frames around the country, in political circumstances that you would never have imagined real. The fact that one cannot speak about gay people in a public school in certain grades and in certain contexts really puts the kibosh on what we had thought was a moving, things were getting better. And now we need to go back and figure out, and here's in a way what Eshel does that I think is important. In order for progress to work, we need to populate the middle spaces. Because what happens is that the left talks to the left and the right talks to the right. And you can do this, you can give a Torah lecture and provide all the sources that say no, and provide all the sources that press toward, onus rachmana patre, the merciful one doesn't hold accountable those that are under duress, and lo tamod adam hayacha, and pikuach nefesh. In other words, everybody will have their verses. And then what happens is that everyone takes their verses and goes home and nothing happens. So that you get, the Orthodox people to feel that they do not need to be challenged, and the queer community to feel that it doesn't need to answer to any religious concerns whatsoever. What we all need to do is to figure out how to tolerate diversity and populate the center. And that is it's the hardest work. It means, in a way, you have to be careful about the messages you give, because the messages you give will either be hurrah to the people who agree and be demonized by the people who don't. You've got to give messages that make everybody feel that they are humbled by the realities of the other that they are confronting. Mm-mm. And that, a space of humility in the middle, is what everybody needs right now, and it's what's most lacking.
Yeah, that is so powerful. In so many other movements, we hear, you're intolerant, you're a hater, you're out. And what I hear you saying is, no, 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 no. We need to stay humble in conversation, in dialogue, in community with people who exhibit intolerance at this moment. That is the only way to make a path forward. I think that's incredibly wise. It makes sense why this is an Orthodox movement too. And I think that's where real progress happens. And so thank you for that. So last question, I know you could talk about this for hours, but picking up on what you were just saying, looking at Orthodoxy now, where are we experiencing some unique progress? Where are we experiencing some unique pushback? What are the opportunities of the moment?
So the progress is actually quite dramatic. We've interviewed over 230 Orthodox pulpit rabbis, and the fact that they engage with us in a conversation is itself remarkable. So I would say some 35%, some third, a little more than a third, are articulating complete and utter empathy with reality and express halacha as a kind of limiting factor that they wish they could have leadership help them solve. And they are with us. It's just that they recognize that in order to hold on to a nomenclature and a set of social and political positioning, they can't say mazel tov to a gay couple at a wedding or at a when they get engaged. But we've discovered that many of them are coming up with ways for gay couples, certainly gay individuals, that's actually broadly in the modern Orthodox community and even in others, gay people can be out and attend synagogue, and usually, as long as they're not carrying a banner all the time, there really are very few places now that exclude. But when you're married, you're real. You define a reality that people have to deal with, and especially if you have kids. So the space we're finding most difficulty in is this space of normalization of the lives of LGBTQ folks. We're pushing and engaging the community with a movie called Marry Me However, and we're happy to bring it to any community that wants to watch it. Rabbi Mordechai Vardi is an Orthodox rabbi of Kibbutz Rosh Tzurim in Israel, made a film, a documentary, interviewing 3 gay men and 2 lesbians who married against their orientation to fulfill familial and religious expectations, and it all falls apart. And they tell their story with the ex-spouses in front of rabbis and educators. And it's very powerful. And the underlying, like the sentiment that's deepest there is like, rabbis only can say 2 things to people, like either get married against your orientation or live a celibate life. If you don't give a 15-year-old some vision of adulthood,
yeah,
they are either going to do terrible things to themselves or others or walk away.
right.
And so right now we are in that space where Orthodox rabbis are struggling to figure out how they hold on to that conflict and address it. And we're finding rabbis willing, but very nervous about where it might lead them and not sure about how to respond.
Okay, so I lied. I have one last question. Our community does singles events, and there's a total heteronormative assumption in these single events. Should we be expanding single events to straight folks and queer folks, and like have single events that is kind of a space for everyone to kind of be in? Or should we make more clear that this is a straight single event, so to speak, and this is a queer single event? How do we embrace people seeking partners in these types of gatherings?
Well, you think you have trouble. If I run a dating event, I have to worry about not only the gay guys and the lesbian women and having separate events for them, but I got to worry about the genderqueer folks who are not necessarily articulating any gender, and the folks that are kind of interested in dating somebody but are bi, and therefore who are they allowed to kind of show interest in and who not? And so the complexity here is real. And what I would suggest is that the way we think it makes most sense is to make friendship engaging programs where anybody can meet anybody, within the back of people's minds, they're still thinking who I might connect with, and then have dating events that are very specific to what people are looking for.
Great. Love it. Love it. Friends, donate to Eshel, and you should also get on their mailing list and follow their social media. And you should do that if you're queer, but you should also do that if you have an LGBTQ family member or friend. And you should also do that if you have a community member. And we should also all do that because we all are allies to this work. And so it's something we all have to be a part of. Thank you so much, Steve. Keep up the
Thank
great
you so much, Shmuly.